So there's going to be some learning experiences, and starting a little bit late here, but we can go a little bit and grab the time on the other end if we want. We were told, so that's really cool. My background in psychedelics goes back over 50 years. In 1967, in a little small town upstate New York, me and my girlfriend ate a tab of acid. And I was about 19. And my life has never been the same. Everything that happened on that day informed everything that followed in my life. And the core teaching that I got that day, what changed my life, was two things. Number one, God is love. And that wasn't an intellectual realization. And I know this audience real well. You know what I'm saying when it's not an intellectual knowing. It's a body full on knowing, no thought. And then the second thing, which is similar, was you're me and I'm you. And I saw it. I saw this common pool of humanity that we all share for the first time in my life. Went out to Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, 1967, Summer of Love. You've all heard of it, I'm sure. It's quite a wild trip out there with the Grateful Dead playing every day in Golden Gate Park, and Jefferson Airplane, and Janis Joplin, and all the great groups that came through there. I remember seeing Jimi Hendrix for free in the park, in Golden Gate Park. And there was a vibe, there was a thought, there was an idea that permeated this ragtag group of so-called hippies. And that was life could look different than it does. What do I mean by that? That there could be an end to war. That there could be collegial and collaborative efforts in all areas, including business and everything. And we did a lot. I think the movement had a big effect on stopping the war, the protests and so on. I personally counseled many, many young men who didn't want to go to Vietnam and kill people. And it was a beautiful time. The music, the art. We changed the world to some extent, but we were missing one thing. We were missing one thing, and we didn't even know the word. So I'll share with you the word. The word is healing. We didn't know it, right? It wasn't like we knew it and we didn't want to do that. We just wanted to go to the park and eat acid. We didn't even know the word, right? Nobody talked about it. Nobody mentioned that we needed this personal healing. So what happened on my journey was I crashed and I burned. First, I crashed on drugs and alcohol. I didn't see the difference between the different substances, the uniqueness, the sacredness of psychedelics, the divinity of psychedelics versus the gross misappropriation of our energy and other drugs like heroin, cocaine. And I guess being an addict type, I fell into that loop. Then I said, wait a minute, I've got to live a straight life. And I began living the so-called straight life. And for about 25, 30 years, I didn't touch psychedelics. And then I bottomed out at the worst bottom that any human being could have. I was going up an elevator in Toronto one day. I had a management consulting business I work with, still do, with some of the biggest financial companies in the world. I'm going up on the elevator to see a friend of mine in Toronto on a business trip, and I look at the phone, and it's my doctor. And doctors don't usually call you, so when you get a call from a doctor, it's usually not good. In this case, the test that I had taken on my liver showed that I had terminal illness. And that shocked me back. It shocked me back, and I knew I had to heal. That this idea that you can just make money, and I started living that life. I wrote 8 books. I traveled. I spoke in every state in the union. I've traveled to Europe and Asia, speaking and training and consulting. But I was missing the point. of healing. And so, as a lot of you may know, that when you're an addict, a lot of times you transfer that addiction to something else, right? To work, to relationships, right? It's so natural, it's so easy. It's just anything that's going to keep you distracted. And that's what I did, but you can't play that game long enough. And so I went back to psychedelics, and the psychedelics began to work with me to heal them. I went to Costa Rica. I did ayahuasca, 3 ceremonies or 4 ceremonies. I started connecting with the mushrooms and the substances in a divine way, in a surrender way, in a humbling way, and not just a frivolous way, the way we did it the first time. And by the way, recreation on psychedelics from the Psychedelic Institute, which is I'm CEO of, we view recreation as part of healing. And you know, when you go to a doctor, in mental health, anything to do with mental health, they always ask you, what do you do for recreation? And the word recreation actually comes from a Greek word, which means to recreate connection to the soul. And so there's nothing wrong with taking a psychedelic, going out in nature, enjoying it, taking a walk, connecting with the birds in the sky, and all those beautiful things, just for recreation. So we believe that recreation, when channeled in the proper direction, is just as healing as anything else that we do. So my journey began there, and I then proceeded to connect deeper and deeper and deeper with the medicine and ask for guidance. The medicines that we're going to talk about today are living entities. They're living, breathing entities. They have a spirit. And you can communicate with those entities. You can communicate with those spirits, and they will teach you and talk to you. And that's what I began doing. I began listening. And on a DMT experience about 5 years ago, medicine said that we should start the Psychedelic Institute of Los Angeles and carry the message and educate and bring the medicine to other people. And that's what we did. And we've been here in Los Angeles now. We have an annual conference that goes for 2 days. And we have multiple events during the year, and we're just getting our virtual platform so we can connect with people all over the world and provide coaching, education, and so on. So that brings us to the current seminar and the current workshop, which is about the potential of psychedelics. What is the potential, and how do we reap the benefits of that potential? How do we harvest those benefits? The experts we're going to hear from today are going to give you a wonderful view of the variables and the different avenues you can take. And I'm going to give you some advice right now. Listen. Listen. If somebody's speaking about ayahuasca on the panel today, or they're speaking about, listen to yourself. Listen internally. Listen to the medicine. The medicine, I said, is a living spirit. It's not only when you take it that you feel it. It's all the time that you feel it. I remember I was getting ready to go to Costa Rica, and even though I've done a ton of psychedelics, folks, I was scared about ayahuasca. And I was sitting out on my chaise by the beach here in Manhattan Beach, and I was like, oh my God, I am scared. I am really scared. I don't know what this ayahuasca thing is. And all of a sudden the voice came in, and I said, what? I said, who are you? And the voice said, I'm your mother. I said, no, my mother died a couple of years ago. You're not my mother. I'm clear on that one. No, she said, I'm your spiritual mother. I said, fine. And she said, you're going to do just great. Don't worry about a thing. And this is the way the medicine works. It's no accident you're in this room today. It's no accident about the speakers we're going to hear today, share with you their expertise, their knowledge. Decades of experience will be on this show for you here today. I'm as excited about psychedelics as ever. The research is coming in at an incredible rate. It's just pouring in. The possibilities are so endless in terms of dementia, in terms of some of the mental illnesses that have been plaguing us and being tried to glossed over with SSRIs and all these other horrible things. psychedelics have that true potential. And if you're interested in learning more and exploring more, that's what we're going to talk about here today. We've got some vendors outside in the hallway area. If you go out there, these are vetted, reputable vendors who are local to a large degree. You can go out and talk to them about specifics about some of these substances. Most of their days are spent educating because we have to learn. It's called citizen research. And this is the most current research you'll get, is speaking to the people who work with the medicines, who see the reactions, who understand them. And so the first section we're going to have today is about the history. When did psychedelics start? When did people start using them? How did they start using them? What were they looking for when they were using them? Now, some of it's theoretical, some of it we know, and so on. But let's put this in perspective. You know, most people think psychedelics, and they think of the 50s and 60s and LSD and the big kind of, you know, the horrible vendetta against psychedelics by the government, Nixon and Reagan and all these people. And none of that stuff was ever true. And so now the research is finally getting unleashed, and it's truly exciting. MDMA, MDA, LSD, ayahuasca, psilocybin, in my estimation, are going to be standard practice within a very short time for anybody that really wants to seek mental health. Let's look at it from the perspective. Second section we're going to cover today is going to be what's going on right now. We're going to talk about retreats. We're going to talk about one-on-one coaching. We're going to talk about microdosing, which is really big right now and should be. And that's the center section. And finally, the third section, we'll talk about what's the future of psychedelics. And we have some folks who really have a great viewpoint informationally on this and provide you where they think this thing is going from a financial point of view, from a healing point of view, from a legal point of view. We'll talk about the regulatory issues and so on in the final section, which concern us all, obviously. So with that, I'd like to call up Stephanie Carzone, and excited to have her here today. I wish I could do a bio on you. All I know is that everybody raves about you, so I'm going to have to, that's all I know. My best friends have said, you got to get Stephanie for the symposium, so. And you have a mic right there. Let me take my coffee and my stuff.
Move the chair, too. Is that all right? Hi, everyone. How are you guys? Did you have a good weekend out here? Amazing. Wow, this is very reverby. You can all hear me okay, I imagine? Yeah? Okay, well, my name is Stephanie Carzone Abrams. Well, first and foremost, I'm a human being. I'm a clinical pharmacologist, an educator, a writer, a musician, many things, but I'm here today because I'm passionate about this field. I came from a field of study that was very focused on Western medicine, as you can imagine, with a background in pharmacy and pharmacology. But there were realizations along the course of my education and my career that led me here. And so today we're going to explore psychedelics. And I just want to say, you know, psychedelics are a huge topic of conversation right now. Kind of like what Paul was saying, we're seeing that they're innovating modern medicine and they're providing solutions to problems that we haven't been able to solve in healthcare for a very long time. That being said, psychedelics are not the answer to everything. I still very much believe in Western medicine. But for me, it's about having options. And for when people want to seek options elsewhere, we need to be able to provide them with an answer. And so perhaps psychedelics, plant medicines, these therapies might be able to provide that answer. So psychedelics, it's a big word, carries a lot of weight. Let's break it down. The word psyche or psyche means soul, and delic means to reveal. So we're revealing the soul. We're manifesting the mind. And we're referring to not only a substance, but a practice that can bring the unconscious thoughts, feelings, and perceptions into awareness. Awareness. Awareness is the gateway to connection. It's what allows us to fully engage with ourselves and the world around us. So I'll pause here and tell you a quick story. So during my time working in the ICU, I witnessed firsthand how traumatic brain injuries could affect anyone. They were not discriminative. They could affect anyone at any time, regardless of their age, their lifestyle, and their background. And another thing that I learned is that both mental and physical illness can leave people profoundly disconnected from themselves, from their families, from their loved ones, and from the world around them. So now this sense of fragmentation I described is not limited to severe injury, right? Disconnection nowadays can affect all of us. We've got 60% of Americans struggling to build meaningful connection, and we have a third of these people lacking a supportive social network. So I began to pay attention to connection, the importance of connection to self, the connection to others, to our ancestral lineage. And you must be wondering where I'm going with this. Well, at the core of the human experience lies the desire to connect. But our modern lives, our isolation, has disrupted our connection to the natural rhythms of life. But it seems like ancient cultures seem to have a greater understanding of life's rhythms and the power of plant medicine and altered states of consciousness. So in the midst of this connection crisis, we can maybe stand a chance to learn something from ancient peoples and their practices. So today, we're going to talk about psychedelics, but we're also going to talk about connection. And we're going to start with iboga. So across the world in West Africa, there is a sacred shrub that grows, and it's known as iboga. And for centuries, the Bwiti people of Gabon have gathered this plant for deep spiritual ceremonies that lead to healing, self-discovery, and a connection with the ancestors. So imagine a night alive with the sound of drums and a fire crackling under the stars. This communion was, and still is, a way to honor ancestry, to confront personal truths and restore balance within self and with the community, all the while reaffirming the connection with nature and spiritual realms. This ancient practice could span multiple days, and sometimes they would engage the entire community or the entire village. Now, fast forward to today, and the sacred power of iboga has extended far beyond the villages of West Africa. This plant is showing its potential today, particularly in treating substance use disorders and traumatic brain injuries. In this study here, a group of 30 special ops veterans, all diagnosed with a mild traumatic brain injury, traveled to a treatment center in Mexico to participate in a study that was led by Stanford University. Here, ibogaine, the psychedelic compound in iboga, is unscheduled, so it's accessible. Now, these veterans were hardened and frustrated by combat and also the failure of these conventional treatments, but they were still searching for hope. And for these veterans, it wasn't just about clinical data and outcomes. This was a true chance at healing. After years of being told to accept their limitations, they had a chance to reconnect with themselves and the world around them. And remarkably, this became the very first study to show that a single treatment of ibogaine, paired with deep personal work and therapy, significantly reduced chronic disability from combat-related traumatic brain injury. Now, let's recall the Mazatec people of Mexico. They have used psilocybin mushrooms, what we call magic mushrooms, for centuries. These sacred rituals, steeped in reverence, offered them spiritual insights, connection with nature, and a profound sense of community. Often referred to as Niños Santos, sacred children, they were used in healing ceremonies to emphasize communication with the divine. These rituals, typically led by a curandera or a curandero, a healer, involved prayers, chants, and a meditative environment. Well, finally, modern science is catching up. We've discovered that psilocybin has the ability to change your mind, our minds, literally. So imagine your brain like this bustling city. Your default mode network, which is one of our brain's many networks, is the common route, the familiar commute. So psilocybin has the power to take these roads and transform them into an open canvas, breaking down the usual routes and creating a dazzling map of new possibilities. Suddenly, instead of the rigid, well-worn paths, you have trails that are connecting parts of your brain and your mind that have rarely spoken before. And what we call this is neuroplasticity. Who in this room has heard that buzzword, neuroplasticity? Okay, so I'm gonna break it down a little. So, when I Googled neuroplasticity, I got this slide, which I thought was really cool because you can just see her sense of freedom, right? So this isn't just a theory. It's been studied, and it's been captured in imaging, where branches on neurons called dendrites bud and blossom just like those on a tree. And I'll show it to you right here. So this is an image from a study at Cornell University that demonstrates what a single dose of psilocybin can do. It led to what we call neuronal rewiring, where you can see these dendritic spines that are like little buds on a tree budding. So what does this mean for us? It means an outpouring of creativity, an emotional release, and a spiritual feeling of unity, a sense of oneness that has the power to dissolve the barriers between us and others. So here's the funny thing about getting older. Our thought patterns become more rigid, especially after we've lived through a traumatic event or a difficult time, and it's harder to break free from ingrained habits. Unlike children, we lack the same neuroplasticity. That's the resilience and the flexibility to adapt and change. So now imagine your mind like this open window, right? In childhood, it's wide open, it's letting in the breeze, all of the learning. As children, we absorb everything. But as we age, the window gradually closes, and it makes it more challenging to learn, especially to unlearn the things that no longer serve us. Psychedelic therapies have the potential to reopen that window. It has the potential to soften the thought patterns and sometimes dissolve them completely. And their power, their true power, lies not just in the medicine itself, but in the preparation, in the intention, and the integration that surround it. And this form of therapy is reshaping traditional therapeutic models. We are redefining terms like healing and transformation that are typically associated with brokenness and reassociating them with wholeness. We're reprioritizing the collective and the community, and we're reminded of our innate capacity for healing, for transformation, and for joy. And importantly, these opportunities aren't just for those who are suffering from illness or mental health challenge. They can help many of us navigate the complexities of life. However, I must mention, not everything is for everyone, and this isn't without risk. So practicing self-responsibility, being prepared, and sometimes that also means seeking professional guidance. All of this is extremely important. So while psilocybin and ibogaine are rooted in the ancient, another important compound, one of my favorite compounds, is MDMA. So some of you might know MDMA and its history, how it moved from the lab to the dance floor, quickly creating a cultural phenomenon before it got scheduled as a controlled substance. But its impact most definitely endured. So often called a heart opener, it can enhance the release of oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine. And these are neurochemicals that foster a sense of closeness, of trust, and of empathy. And these dance floors became spaces where judgment melted away, community blossomed instead, radical self-expression, self-acceptance, and love took root. And despite that stigma that follows rave culture, there's no denying that these dance floors gave rise to the recognition of MDMA's therapeutic potential. So some of you may have heard of MAPS. This is the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They have pioneered the studies that have led MDMA to go to the FDA for evaluation. And they found that this isn't just a therapy. It's not just a treatment. It's a key to unlock what has been lost forever. Because for some, MDMA therapy has given them the courage to face pain and shed the trauma that once kept them from joy and rediscovering their worth. So this isn't just science. This is a reclamation of what it means to be truly human. So we are at the Conscious Life Expo, so I would be remiss not to mention DMT. So many users report encountering entities or beings, often described as guides or ancestors or otherworldly intelligences. And these beings have offered wisdom, healing, and profound insights. These experiences can feel deeply, deeply sacred and foster a sense of connection to oneself or something greater to oneself, and it challenges these conventional ideas about consciousness and existence. And modern neuroscience, kind of suggests that DMT is inducing an altered state of consciousness by activating our serotonin receptors, particularly in that default mode network that I mentioned earlier. And what that does is dissolve the ego, and it opens the mind to extraordinary experiences. Studies are also hypothesizing that these entity encounters may arise from the brain's attempt to interpret complex patterns or stimulate archetypal imagery stored in the subconscious. So while this all remains a mystery, ongoing research explores whether they reflect inner aspects of the mind or an external dimension, or maybe both. But these experiences, nonetheless, challenge the boundaries of materialism. They spark conversation about the nature of consciousness and the potential for realms beyond our physical understanding. So whether it's spiritual or neurological or both, the DMT experience is inspiring awe, and it's bridging the worlds of modern science and ancient wisdom. So now let's revisit our definition of psychedelic and the vital role that awareness plays in fostering connection. Achieving deeper connection and transformation isn't limited to the use of psychedelic substances. Practices as ancient as meditation, yoga, music, dance, these are all inherently psychedelic. They manifest the soul and reveal the mind. And remarkably, if you observe a brain that's dancing and listening to music, you are seeing the same neurochemicals charge the brain as when using a psychedelic substance. More importantly, when we share these practices, whether they are with psychedelic substances or yoga or dance, the joy that we witness in others amplifies our own, and it strengthens the bonds that we have to the people around us. And they draw us back to these communal experiences again and again. So these simple rituals can be seamlessly woven into our lives, fostering community and creating space for genuine connection. Whether through psychedelic medicines like psilocybin, MDMA, ibogaine, or through the non-psychedelic practices like dance and yoga and meditation, we have to remember that we have the tools to reconnect. We are the medicine, and when we find ways to connect, this is how we will find joy. Thank you. Thank you. I was going to ask if
Thank you, Stephanie. Who would like to ask Stephanie a question? Do we have somebody with the mic on the floor? No? Nobody there?
I have a question for the audience. Who here has tried a psychedelic?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Oh, wow. So I'm talking to a very experienced room. Well, yeah. I hope that you still enjoyed, despite your deep-rooted experience and history. But if there are no questions at this time, there
This
are.
one up here. Yeah. Let's get it in the mic so everybody can hear it. Thank you.
Thank you for your talk. That was really amazing. My question is regarding the neurons with the dendrites and the budding post psilocybin. Was there a particular area on the neurons where the budding was occurring?
So these are the dendrites. So you have branches that come off of the neurons, right? And these are going to help form synapses. So think of like two flowers and like branches that come out at each other, and it was just across the spine entirely. And from there, you have new neuronal connections.
Right, but my question is how there's different types of dendrites, whether they're closer to the soma of the cell body or the axon
Further
itself.
away.
So that's what I was wondering. Were you seeing in a particular area?
I've seen images of different types across the board. This particular study, I'm not aware of where exactly. Close to the soma, though, I think it is harder to form these new dendritic splines. They tend to form kind of at the end because then they're closer to other neurons, and that can actually be influential to where connections are made, like how far away it is from the main body. Yeah.
Awesome.
Any other questions specific to the history? Maybe, do you want to tell the ape story?
The bored ape theory? Okay, I can give a little, but I'm sure a lot of people know that story.
How many know the ape story?
No? Oh.
Nobody.
Well, there's a theory. There's a theory that once upon a time, through our evolution, if you study the brains of, I guess, like apes and Homo habilis and the other species that came before us, there was this exponential growth that happened on an anatomical level. And so there is this bored ape theory that you had a bunch of apes that were eating a bunch of mushrooms and evolved quite quickly. And, it's very possible. One thing that I've noted through just my education, and I remember when I did like a pharmacology of psilocybin course, is that we very much evolved with psilocybin. It became very clear to me that it is something that our bodies were very, very attuned and used to. Just the way we process it, the way we metabolize it, how it doesn't really interfere with our usual bodily processes. It's very hard for it to be toxic. Like you would have to eat pounds and pounds of psilocybin. And so I think that's really, really intriguing. And so if I kind of think of the bored ape story and I think of what I learned in that class, it very well could be true. Yeah.
The idea that these apes were walking around after, I guess, a flood or a fire or whatever, and that mushrooms were growing, and they eat mushrooms, and they would eat those mushrooms. And so it's called the stoned ape theory.
Oh, stoned ape. Sorry, not bored ape.
Yeah.
Stoned, bored. Bored when you're stoned, stoned when you're bored. Yeah.
Question? Yeah.
So what were the advancements? You said that you mentioned in that story of significant advancements. So what were the advancements?
I think one of the main things was that the size of the brain has been mapped out through time, looking at different species just through evolution. And all of a sudden there was like a jump in the anatomical size of the brain. And I think there was also a study of white matter, gray matter, and then on top of that, it was a jump in the skill and the processing. And it was like all of a sudden, these species were doing advanced tasks, right? Or like their survival skills, I'm just gonna say tripled, I don't know the actual number, but that was kind of the study. And I wish I could go into more detail because I'm really not familiar, but that's kind of the gist of it. There's a lot online about this where I'm sure you could find like exactly what it was. But
yeah, there is some scientific stuff that supports that, but makes sense. I'd like to, Stephanie, if you could come and have a seat, and then we'll maybe have a chance to come back to you. But I'd like to bring up our next speaker on the history. And where's Shane? Shane's there. Come on up, sir. You can sit, you can stand. Thank you, Steph. Thank you. Good to see you, my brother. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what I know about Shane. And he's been part of our, one of the things that Stephanie mentioned was this idea of community. And that's what the download for me was on psychedelics, to start the psychedelic community here in LA and virtually all over the world, that we need each other. When you start this process of transformation, spiritual connection, you need other people who understand and who can relate to what's going on. And it's not necessarily doctors or therapists, which are fine. It's each other, sharing that. We call it citizen research. Right now, citizen research is really the primary form of research because of all the blockades we have to get real research done. Shane came to us at, I think, our first conference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 3 years ago, yeah. And he's part of the Native American tradition. To me, what's really impressive about Shane, and he'll make the offer here, I'm sure, is if you want to experience a true Indian sweat lodge, not sweat lodge, but ceremony, in a traditional way, Shane will invite you at no cost. So that's kind of cool. I've never done it with him, but, if you're interested, you could certainly speak to him over after this, at the break and so on. So with that, Shane, why don't you can fill in some of the gaps and take it from there.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Paul, and thank you for everyone showing up, taking the time out of their day. Hope everyone's having a good time. My name is Shane Nordy, coming out of Southern California area by Fallbrook area, Temecula, part of the Liseño, or in our language, the Pale Miquitian people. It's the people of the West, and I'm a board member of Decriminalized Nature. I'm also the founder and leader of Church of the People for Creator Mother Earth. We're an earth-based sacrament church, and I also just got appointed to, I was picked by the governor of Maryland for the Task Force on Responsible Use of Natural Psychedelic Substances. So that's cool too, especially offering broader insight on psychedelics, considering that the mass majority of it's mainstream. A lot of it is just too many mainstream things. That's not a bad thing. It's not saying here. I'm not up here to say it's bad. I'm just up here to speak from my position and my lifestyle of taking these mushrooms. So I had a slideshow, I had a PowerPoint, but it didn't necessarily go right with this computer. But it was just showing pictures of kind of like the ceremony and what we do and how we operate. And I'll just do a little bit of history, not too much, because I always tell people, during the mission times, the missionaries of American Indians here in California, I always tell people a lot of our traditions and culture is gone. Even if we want to go back, there's other tribes that were living, like I tell people in the Midwest. The reason why their culture is so strong is it's like you had a couple hundred years down here. When you had the missionaries and Spaniards and all these people down here coming and rallying us up and doing what they were doing, while the other tribes in the Midwest and whatnot didn't even know what was going on to a degree. And so, I always tell people the history is not so detailed as much as people know, but we have petroglyphs and whatnot. I got a couple pictures of the petroglyphs. You can see the mushrooms coming down. They're split on the side, and it looks like there's 2 DNA strands. I was just on a call with the people on the task force in Maryland, and I always hear a lot of people mention, oh man, there was never no Indians down in California or Northern America and whatnot that weren't practicing psychedelics. It was just down south of the Mazatec and Maria Sabina, and I'm here as a proof that that's not correct, and the research on that is not saying it's incorrect, but it should be broadened more. There should be more research done. I always tell people there's a lot of ceremonies that Northern America doesn't even know exist. You can't just Google a traditional Native ceremony and expect it to just give you the whole laydown and show you everything that happened. And so that's kind of how we operate. Just a little background on myself. I help Native tribes fight for their rights. Did a movement still going on. They're taking it to the Supreme Court. It's Oak Flat. They're fighting Resolution Copper. Rio Tinto, BH Billiton, they want to extract $60 billion worth of copper from their sacred site. And so just doing that work, traveling around Native country and being a part of the Native movement that just, took me around, and I got to see how other indigenous people live, and then ended up coming back and, seeing the resources that we have as traditional people, especially, I've been doing mushroom work since 2011, so been a few years working with this medicine. And so I ended up coming back home and asking my mother, what do we have? I know we had ceremonies, we had traditional ways, to counteract with, when people die, when we see something traumatic, when something traumatic happens to us. There's many things we did, not just go to the doctor and people are saying get an SSRI or get diagnosed with this. It's like, no, there was, protocol, there was different ways, just like even simple as someone dying. I always tell people there's a whole protocol for that, and it's to help with the mind, body, and spirit. I've been to many different funerals where it's real quick and it's over, and it's like, how does that sit well with somebody, How does that sit well? Someone's going to open casket, and they go in, a couple dirt, touch them, they bury them, and it's like, then what? You still got the pain, you still got the suffering. So I always tell people these ceremonies help people, mentally unwind from traumatic experiences and connect back to themselves, back to their community, back to their people. And so just doing this medicine, like I said, I've done over 200 plus ceremonies. I've worked with Special Forces veterans, UFC fighters, just regular people, a lot of different people, not just tier one people, but, definitely work with those guys just to kind of see where the gist is, because working with so many people, I hear, all these different avenues, psychedelics, from microdosing, ayahuasca, ibogaine. So my field is strictly psilocybin mushrooms and reconnecting back to the spirit. And so with me, that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Just be open. Look more into things. I know it's exciting times for psychedelics. I'm very impressed with myself with seeing some of these companies and people moving. But one thing that I see majority is a lack of spirit. You got all these multi-million-dollar companies and pushing products. I always tell people, even paying people to put their supplements on a higher shelf, paying things, pushing statistics. Not saying everyone's a liar, but if you guys know how the game works, sometimes it's not always the most truthful things that are out there to push policy, push this, push that. I'm part of it. Part of DN board and working with Maryland, so I got a lot of gist on different DN groups, different boards, and pushing this. People in New York trying to legalize, Oregon. Very connected into the psychedelic space. And so that's my thing to offer to people is the spirit. If you come to me with an issue or something going on in your life, and the first thing I got to tell you is how much can you pay me, or give you some payment plan. I always tell people I don't know how much healing that it involves, especially if that's where my motto is how can I make more money off of this? Especially if some people can't even afford some of the prices it takes to get certified, to go to a facility, to go to a center, rent out Airbnbs, whatever it may be. So when I hear a lot of the psychedelic talk, and I'm not saying here, I'm just saying in general, like the broader spectrum, it's not geared to the general public. It's usually geared to this side, that side, or the rich people, or these ones. And so for me, I'm just trying to create equitable access, true equitable access. Because like I said, the work that I do, I've seen people charge from $500 to $5,000 plus to do psilocybin treatment and therapy. And I always tell people, there's two ways to get data. You can get data in the wild, or you can go out there and trank that lion, put a muzzle on him, take him back to your facility, keep injecting them with tranquilizers, who else knows, and then you do your studies. You're going to get data, but what I say is that data is tailored to that degree, meaning like that's not true data. Those are data under, circumstances that are made for that way, versus going out and actually study a lion in its true form. That's how I feel about psychedelics when it's so medicalized and scientificized. And don't get me wrong, there needs to be data, there needs to be, protocol and whatnot. But I'm just saying that, like we're talking about, you're going to get more data from the people, honest, regular people, versus the rich guy who is used to gassing up products, lying to the customers, and ultimately wants to make the most money they can. And so for me, like I said, I want to promote the healing of, free access, and I've talked to a lot of people, and not very many people are offering free, psychedelic therapy, healing assistance. It's very rare, and I mean truly, not just like, the standard renting out and bringing some sound bowls and bringing, your friend who's a shaman and bringing this person who's an herbalist and all that. That's not, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying like the way we operate, it has a different type of feel to it, and that's kind of what I want to see in the psychedelic community, because everyone is talking about connecting and finding themselves and breaking out of the system and getting back into the land. And to me, I'm like, well, this is one of the ways. You're not going to find, Creator, Mother Earth, the guy in a lab coat and, an artificial building, and you getting injected with synthetic psilocybin or some other synthetic or something else in that nature. And like I said, all the people that find that healing, but I think a lot of people would like to, experience the natural side and the organic side and not necessarily have to go through the medical system and be told how much you could take or how much you could do. Just like in Oregon, you can go to a facility and take, psilocybin, but you can't pick one. You can't grow one, felony. And then they cap it at 50 milligrams. It's like, what kind of stuff is that? And then it's between $25, $35, up $1,000. So it's like, who's going to want to pay that? Like I always tell people, if I was going to kill myself and I wanted to go get a treatment and I need to chunk out $5,000 and I need to leave the country, I need to leave my family, not everyone could do that, Not everyone has that time to just be like, hey, I'm out of here. I'll be down in Peru, or I'll be down over here, or I'm going to fly out here. And it's like, not everyone could do that, So that's one thing that I'm trying to also prescribe is...
Shane, if I could just interrupt you. Part of what you're bringing up is the difference between the medical model and the spiritual model.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to understand that we've gotten shuttled into the medical model, and what you're saying, if I'm hearing you right, is that model doesn't work when you're
Right.
talking about ethnogenic medicines. It's not applicable.
Definitely, and that's like with DN. It's like we have a model: grow, gift, gather. So it's like, no corporation should have control of what you need to take. Like we were saying, recreational. You should have the right to spiritually want to do what you need to do for your spiritual reason, religious reason, or just personal reasons. You shouldn't have a multi-million-dollar company or all these other people that really don't care about the human. Telling you can only do this or do that. So that's one of the models that D-Cream pushes is grow, gift, gather, because it's, if you have tomatoes, it shouldn't be illegal for you to give tomatoes to your friend. Same thing if you're growing, psychedelics, mushrooms or something like that. Like it shouldn't be penalized or punished, especially with the community that wants to access these medicines. And then I feel like, it opened the doors for research too, and data. People want to do research and data. Well, it's like decriminalize it, open it up, open the doors, and let's start doing this instead of creating models that are just subjected to certain groups of people and demographics and not looking at the general whole people that want help, and that's how I see us as people, is just the general people that are looking,
Yeah, keep in mind, 80 million people took psychedelics last year. Probably 2% of them did them legally. I would say less than 1%, actually, because the only thing they could access is Oregon, Colorado, or ketamine. The vast majority of people are accessing these more modern drugs like MDMA and LSD and so on. We'll go deeper into that issue, but I just want to kind of bring it up because it's something that everybody here should be aware of, that this stuff historically goes back, like Stephanie said, thousands of years. I mean, this is not new stuff.
Right.
And now to put it in this kind of folder that it's all new is kind of ridiculous in a way. These shaman, these traditions go back so deep. Would you do me a favor and just explain a little bit about your process, how you have a ceremony, what it consists of when it's done in this kind of manner?
Yeah, so, one thing I tell people too, like I have a friend who went out to an organ model, and he's saying it was like being in kindergarten, come on everybody, come on, hold your hand, we're gonna go to the bathroom, come on, everyone get up, and it's like also people just watching you and staring at you. And so like for me, and I tell people too, there's not even any communal effort that much too in something like that. Like there's no bonding, there's no like familiarity with people, there's no building community. And so with us, obviously it starts, prior before the ceremony. I prep myself because it's heavy work. The ceremonies we do can be anywhere from 8 to 30 grams. And so some of these ceremonies can be very intense, very heavy on the mind, body, and spirit. So I always tell people, I'd start off with like hydrating. Hydrating, just like I used to play football, so I just do like my hydrating regimen. And then from there, it's kind of like just prepping myself because I got to go get everything. Nothing's just like right there for me in house. I actually have to drive up our sacred mountain, and so I'll go up there and I'll cut down the cedar, and then they got the springs and everything up there, so we'll go up there and we'll give offerings and pray to the springs and get our water. But in that time too, like I said, I can have a group of 8 people. 3 of those people know each other and 5 of them don't. So it's like now in this moment, as we're cutting the cedar, gathering, picking it up, it's like everyone kind of starts working. You create a community process. No one's just standing around like hands in the pockets, like, hey, hey, what's your name? What brought you here? What called you to psychedelics? What called you to this way of psychedelics compared to all the other models out there? Just asking simple questions like that. And then in that time, you start to build like a little community sense. And then Joe knows Jimmy over here, and Jimmy knows Frank over here, and now they all get a little communication. It's not strangers anymore. And after that, it's about 2 hours of prepping, cutting, and then we'll set up the Wamkish. I'll get our, we use canvas tarps, and I'll set it up around our Wamkish. Our Wamkish is a big house in our language. That's just where we have our ceremonies, from puberty rite ceremonies to we did cremations when we did cremate, and we had other ceremonies in there. And but back to the
You don't do it in a teepee?
No teepee. But I have done peyote in a teepee and whatnot. And so in that, process, then that's kind of when I start to tell everybody kind of like what we're going to do, how much do you want? Because I always tell people it's never, I never give anyone a set amount. It's you choose your own. People could choose 1, 2, half of 1 and 1. Just, people can choose. There's no, I'm not like, you need to take this, you need to take that.
You guys remember I mentioned that earlier, right? What he's saying now is so critical if you want to get the benefits. And that's to have a personal relationship with the medicine. My dose is not your dose. My psychedelic that I need right now is maybe not your psychedelic. There's a lot of variations. But when you have that communication with the medicine directly, it's not you can't dose like everybody like a machine at a ceremony, because every mushroom is different, every person is different, the stem is different than the cap. Our biological systems are different, how we respond. I know people, I have a friend, he can eat 300 milligrams of MDMA. I would go crazy, and I'm a pretty good psychonaut, but for him, that's his base dose. It's not a high dose at all for his capacity. So this is a very important issue if you're interested in exploring it. And that's why we're going to do in the next session, talk more about microdosing, getting that communication before you even take the substance and how to do that. We'll cover that shortly, but thank you for bringing that point up.
Yeah, definitely. And, I'll just make it a little short. All in all, I just always say, educate yourself first and foremost. Do your own research and figure it out what it is you want out of psychedelics, and what is best for you, because, there's just so many things out there. I say it's better to go somewhere and to know what you need for yourself instead of being like, come on, baby, just give it to me. Like, I'm here, I'm ready for some free love, and I'm ready to just have a good, it's like, not knocking on that, but it's not bad to have a plan and to know yourself and respect yourself and not let some people who may not even know too much about these substances trying to guide you to potentially may not even get what you need. So that's all I say is, just figure yourself, find yourself, and then find what's best for you, because, no one knows you better than yourself. So thank you guys for your time, and we're Church of the People for Creator Mother Earth. Let's put a .com on that.
Let me take a couple questions, Shane. Thank you.
Church of the People for Creator and Mother Earth.com.
That's a long website.
Long one. It's only one. Church of the People for Creator and Mother Earth.com. Yeah. 4. Yeah. 4. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have maybe, and Shane, you can hang out for the day.
No, I actually gotta get back.
Got to take off.
Yeah, I gotta get my kids.
But you'll make it to the first break.
I'll see.
Okay.
Yeah. See where
So
time's at.
he's not going to be here later. So, any questions for Shane about his tradition, how they've used it, how it's affected him, and what he's seen in other people? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. It's fabulous and very informative, and I think it's fabulous what you're doing for everybody who needs access and would like to have access to be able to have access, because some of these ceremonies are extremely expensive that are offered. I have participated in several Native American ceremonies with the Lakota people and the Navajo, and I've traveled to see them, and they were all beautiful, but none of them were psychedelic ceremonies. One medicine man said, yes, we're going to do psychedelics, and then we got there, we spent some time. He says, oh, well, no, we'll do mountain smoke, but that was still beautiful. Now, my question is, when you do your ceremony, with the people, because one of the medicine men asked me to, and gave me the recipe to make a stew, to make food for everybody. Do we come and make a meal and for everybody and do all that, and then that's one question. And also, is there integration afterwards, or does everybody just do their ceremony and leave? And do you have singers and chanters, people singing and chanting during your ceremony too?
So let me get this right. The first question is,
Thank you.
do we have meals cooked or prepped? Is it? Oh yeah. Well, it's mostly my wife. So she's a Native Navajo, and so it just depends. We'll have buffalo. We'll have mutton stew. We'll have different things. But yeah, we're always open for people to come in and bring a dish, or if they want to make something, we've never shied away from having someone help or help prepare food. And then the second one, again, as far as singers and whatnot, no, we don't. We don't have any singers. I always tell people it's very personal. It's very yourself. And this is not to discredit singing. Singing is very beautiful, especially native singing and whatnot. But I always tell people they're just mostly prayers anyway. That's all the song is. Usually it's praying for the people, the land, the animals, the different creations, the different elements, everything, the fire. So it's like song's basically a prayer. And so, no, we don't have any. But I would love to start learning. It's just hard because, like I said, a lot of the singers are out. And then the traditions, like when head singers die, they bury their stuff. So they don't sing. They kind of put it away. So it's like there's a lot of stuff goes on. And it's kind of hard to find singers, too, because they're just all over. Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me. And so I tell people it's spot-on integration. And I'm open. I have people contact me after the ceremony, but it's basically in-house. So, let's say, for instance, we're having the ceremony, and then you hit your peak. And let's just say your peak's at around 12:30, 1:30, 2 o'clock. So then now, as the peak starts coming down, and then now you're starting to become more coherent, you're more aware, you're more in the moment, not necessarily out there on the medicine. And so then that's in the moment where it kind of starts communicating. I've had people start talking about past traumatic experiences, times in war, times in different organizations, times in their family life. And it's kind of like people just open up, and people start talking, including myself. I start talking too, because I take the medicine with people too. I always tell people, I've never been in a ceremony where I don't take the medicine with the people. So I'm also going in there for my own pains and traumas and my own path forward. So I also share the insights with people too of why I'm doing this, or what caused you to get this help that you need. And it's a beautiful experience to hear people in time communicating about what they would like to get out of the experience, or what's bothering them.
How about after that? Do you have anything for integration?
Yeah, no, we have a sweat lodge right in the morning. So if you could sleep, which a lot of people don't, because obviously you're on medicine and you're Zooming. But after that, yeah, around 6 or 7:30, we'll get up and we start taking, because we'll use the tarps that we use on our Wamkish, and then we'll go set up our sweat lodge. And then from there, that's when we get our fire, we get our wood, we get our rocks. It takes about 2 hours. So in that time, too, people are communicating, asking questions, asking about experiences. And sometimes some people don't, they're just to themselves, and which I understand too. Sometimes people want to process it internally and not necessarily share so much. But yeah, during the sweat, that's the time where people start to talk. And then when we go into sweat and we sweat out, all the hardness and the stuff that we were going through in the Wamkish, then that's also a time too to communicate, like when we're pouring on the water, or if someone has a specific prayer request or something they would like to pray for, whether a person, family, themselves, anything like that. So it's all done in that moment, in those moments.
Beautiful. Let's give Shane a hand, if you could.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a great voice for the traditions of the American Native people. And Shane, thank you so much for your work, kind of destigmatizing this stuff. It's really important. We're going to move into our second section right now with, I'm sorry? Oh, one more question. Yeah, go ahead.
I was wondering, where's the location of your sweat lodges?
It's on the La Jolla Indian Reservation.
Southern California.
It's maybe 20 minutes south heading out of Temecula. If you were to go towards Palomar Mountain and whatnot, it's right at the bottom of Palomar Mountain.
And how often do you do them?
So when I'm in there, it's probably about 2 to 3 times a month. Somebody give me the microphone if you at home. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So when I'm in there, it's between 2 to 3 times a month, and then on a slow end, once every month, once every 2 months. But for the most part, it's pretty busy. Like I said, 2 to 3 plus a month. So.
Thank you. Reach out if you feel called to it. Thank you. I'd like to bring up Loretta. Loretta, are you there? Where are you? And Loretta, we're moving into we're going to take a nice 20 or 30-minute break. We've got some vendors out in the outside area there. You can check them out with medicine and all kinds of good stuff. But in the meantime, we'll keep it moving here. And Loretta's a kind of a new friend. We connected, I'm trying to think where, maybe online or at an event. I think, actually, we met.
Your events, we connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she brings, we talked about the medical community and versus the community of people who are much, 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 much more bigger than just the medical community. Loretta is kind of the bridge between the two communities from my perspective. Would that be fair to say?
Mm-hmm.
She brings that psychiatric, psychologist information. She's got the designations and so on. Yet she really understands the medicine at its fundamental level and how to get the most out of it. So you can keep going with the intro. And
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm going to use some cards because I have a story to tell, and I don't want to miss any of it. It's really about my... Okay, can you hear me? It's about my personal journey as a therapist with psychedelic assisted therapy. And the question that really changed everything for me as a therapist was, is it enough to work solely with the conscious mind? Because we spend years discussing trauma and analyzing our pain, but are we truly healing or just managing symptoms? So I'm a clinical psychotherapist, an art therapist, a somatic practitioner, and I've spent my career helping others heal. I've led workshops and retreats and done one-on-one sessions. But despite all the tools I have in my toolbox, I felt that something was really missing from my practice, and the missing piece turned out to be psychedelic-assisted therapy. Imagine if healing trauma didn't take decades. Imagine if PTSD, grief, anxiety, and depression could be treated in months and not just years. And this isn't just wishful thinking, as we know this is happening right now. So I would like to share a client story with you. And the reason I bring it is to show you the transformation through this work from psychotherapy to psychedelic-assisted therapy. So a woman came to therapy carrying deep wounds. To the outside world, she had it all together. She was a professional, a devoted single mother of 3. She had a vibrant social life. But behind closed doors, she was trapped in a very toxic, abusive relationship, and one that threatened to destroy everything she had built. From the outside, no one knew the pain that she was holding. She suffered extensive physical and emotional abuse, and she carried deep scars. But the deepest wounds were the ones on her body, weren't the ones on her body. They were the ones she kept hidden out of shame. When her injuries became impossible to ignore, she reached out for help. That's when the talk therapy ended and the psychedelic-assisted therapy began. With MDMA and psilocybin, she was able to access a profound level of vulnerability that she hadn't been able to get to with psychotherapy. And for the first time, she was able to speak her raw truth without the shame. It was like she could strip away the layers of the ego and really speak from her soul. She reconnected with her body, her emotions, and her heart. She saw her relationship for what it was, not a reflection of her worth, but a dynamic between 2 wounded individuals. She realized she had stayed not because she was weak, but because deep down she didn't believe or know she had deserved better.
Let's walk out here.
This is what psychedelic therapy does. It doesn't just treat symptoms. It reveals the raw, unfiltered truth. It strips back layers of fear, pain, and shame. And it allows you to see yourself clearly, without the stories you've been told or the ones you've told yourself. Through this work, this woman reclaimed her confidence through the psychedelic work. She rediscovered joy, not just in social connection, but also in solitude. She reawakened her sense of purpose, and over time, her brain's neuroplasticity was able to rewire, freeing her from the fear that had once ruled her life. So she was in this work for about 2 years, intensively, and worked with groups, retreats, one-on-one solo journeys, and rigorous integration, which is the real key piece in doing this work for healing. It's the integration work after. She's no longer the same person because she healed. She felt safe in her body and in the world again, and the heavy burden she carried for so long begun to lift. And here's the twist in the story. The woman's journey I just described, that woman was me. That was my journey. So I stand before you today as living proof that psychedelic therapy truly works. It heals trauma, it transforms lives, and it truly saves lives. And it's not just my story, because science supports it. In 2021, MAPS, phase 3 clinical trial, found that 88% of participants with severe PTSD experienced significant reductions in symptoms after just 3 MDMA sessions. After that, 2/3 no longer even met the criteria for PTSD. Also, in 2020, John Hopkins study found that 70% of participants with treatment-resisted depression experienced long-term remission after just 2 psilocybin sessions. These aren't just numbers, they are lives being transformed, not over decades, but in months. We really are on the verge of a revolution in mental health. And imagine if psychedelic therapy became a mainstream option. Imagine a world where healing from trauma, PTSD, depression didn't require years of suffering. Well, I've seen it firsthand. I've watched people break free from abuse, addiction, grief, stagnation, to name but a few, and not just on the surface, but at the deepest levels of their being. There's no magic wand for healing, but psychedelic therapy gives you the power to become your own magic wand. Psychedelics don't do the work for you, they assign you the homework. You do the work. So every struggle I endured, every dark moment, it wasn't happening to me, it was happening for me. And I stand here today in this work because I truly believe with every fiber of my being that it works. So I leave you with a question. If deep healing was truly possible, would you allow yourself to step into it? Because the answer to that question, it has the power to change everything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. What a great story. Why don't you stay there? I'm going to throw you a couple of interesting questions. The medical model. Should somebody, if they're really interested in this, be looking for a therapist who actually uses the substance or has used it? What do you think?
I think so. I think in every, the more you can embody yourself and the more you've tried things, the more you can apply that to your client work. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. Like, you need to have gone through that process. You need to be woken up. You need to be able to track what's going on with your client in the room where they may not be able to verbalize it. So I think it's really, really necessary.
It's critical.
Yeah.
The reason I say that, I mentioned we do Awakening conference every year in October, and I get a lot of speakers calling me, and I think I told you this story. I had 2 in a week, therapists who were licensed, and they said, I'd love to speak about therapy. I said, well, we always have some sessions on that at our conference. And I said, have you ever used psychedelics? And she said, no. It's like going, like, I'm going to be your tour guide to France, but I've never been there. You know, like there's something that doesn't work. Like for regular therapy, right, you could be schizophrenic and help schizophrenics. You know, like you could. I mean, in the current model, but in psychedelic psychotherapy, I don't think you can.
So I trained with MAPS, and what really shocked me was I would say 95% of the people on that training course have no experience whatsoever, and they're training people through slides, through Zoom, how to hold sessions. Yeah. Most of them were doctors or surgical people, so without the therapeutic background. And yeah, I don't know how that works.
It's kind of weird.
I don't know how that is scary.
Yeah, it's a little bit scary. So I say this because we want to give the best information at this symposium, but I would ask any therapist, what's your personal experience with these psychedelics? Because, and the funny part of that story is I had another, now I know why, thank you, I just learned something, was 90% of them don't have any experience.
Right.
It brings us to an important point, and I hope you guys can see it in Loretta. I saw it from the minute that I met her. You either are in it for the money or it's a calling. It's really that. Honestly, guys, I'm telling you.
Well, my bank account will show you that it's a calling.
What?
My bank account will show you it's a calling.
It's a calling.
For sure.
I hear that. I hear that. But you know, we get taken care of. You know that. And that, you know, we weren't brought this far to be left alone.
Right. I'm so passionate about this work because I know it works. It's not just my own experience.
Right.
But, you know, I got my daughter into this work at 21 and it saved her life.
Yeah.
And there are so many stories and examples I can give you.
Yeah.
So not to breach client confidentiality, I use myself.
Yeah. Yeah, it's you know, I do. We've been doing psychedelic experiences with my two daughters. They're 25 and 22, and it's the closest time we ever spend together. It's just there's no words.
Yeah.
To experience that
love
with each other.
Absolutely. I became so disillusioned with my profession a few years ago. I thought, well, it doesn't work. It scratches the side. But actually, it's little pieces of all of it that works. There isn't one thing.
Yeah.
We have to learn how to, as you said, to work with the medicine all the time, not just when we're taking.
Yeah, and it's got to go beyond that, and eventually to get to where we only take the medicine as a celebration, as a sacrament, to reinforce what's already there. Yeah. It's a representation of what we have already within us.
Right, and then when you're open to it, the mushrooms are the master teachers. They will guide you, they'll show you, they'll teach you.
It's amazing, yeah, it's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And you'll hang out, so please, thank you. Thank you, Loretta. Yeah, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't get questions, so. Question? Yeah.
Hi there. I am also a therapist and have done a shit ton of hallucinogens. Here I am.
I can't see where.
Hi there. So I've done a lot of background, and as a therapist, I often want to tell people, you know, what you need to go out and have an experience, but it's a little tricky, right? Legally,
yeah.
You know, I can't say, oh, I know a girl who's got some LSD, and I know a guy who's got a bunch of psilocybin. What interests you? But I often do want to steer it that way.
Yeah.
And how do you navigate that legally? And then, you know, I'm not sending someone off to a big ayahuasca experience because they probably don't have thousands of dollars. Also, I do this work for free as well.
Wow.
And, you know, I'm very much a believer and experiencer, and Kaiser almost killed me, so here I am on the other side of that. And very much want to do more hallucinogenic type guided work.
Yeah.
But do you guide them? Do you have them in your office? Here's a dose, or do you get back to me next week after you've had your experience?
There's lots of different ways. I worked in a quite a large psychedelic community, facilitating journeys for about 5 years, and I met hundreds of people, and people just, I think this work, because we can't advertise it, I have trained under the table and over the table and every which way, and had lots of different experiences. People find you. A lot of it is word of mouth. I mean, I went to MAPS so that I could be in the more legal standpoint, but if I'm allowed to say it, Rick Doblin came on the last lecture and he said, all of you therapists out there using this work, keep on going because you're doing an amazing job, and it's going to be years before we can really get this legalized properly. And I just, you know, some of my therapy, I also have a therapy practice. Some of them know what I do, some of them don't. You know who it's appropriate for and who it's not. And, I run a lot of groups and retreats and one-on-ones. The work just kind of finds you.
Yeah, and on that issue, we'll talk more in the final section today, but I was interviewing Leonard Picard. Leonard Picard came from like a real upper-class New England family, and he got touched by LSD, and he was a chemist, and he got busted, probably the largest LSD bust in history. I'm talking hundreds of millions of dollars at his laboratory. And during the pandemic, they let him out. And so he was supposed to spend the rest of his life there. So he got out. So I called him up, and I said,
You got the LSD?
Yeah. No, that wasn't that. But he should have, actually, now you think about it. That's the next call. So I said to him, we have a conference, and I said, Leonard, what would you want me to tell everybody that are people like Loretta, people like you, people in this room here today that have been touched by the medicine, see the potential, have the calling? What would you want me to tell them from the platform? And he said, be brave. And at first I thought, that's stupid advice. I was like, be brave. And then the more I thought about what he had said in those two words, and that's the calling. Right now we're blessed, by the way, that there's no persecution. I went through the persecution stage in the 60s. It was amazing. It was horrible. You couldn't go to a party where there wasn't narcotics agents and people ready to take you to jail. We don't have that today. It doesn't exist. There's virtually no arrests for psychedelics. I don't know any therapists that have been arrested in the last 4 years. I haven't heard of any. Maybe there's one out of thousands that are doing the work. So they're kind of laying off us now. Just to give you some input on that before we get to our last section, that's a good thing. Why are they laying off? Because, number one, the veterans, the people who sacrificed their life are suffering, and the people in government know that, and they know that the psychedelics. So if they start persecuting psychedelics, they're persecuting our soldiers. Yeah. Also the BIPOC community, the black and marginalized communities, they're also deeply affected and need this help so much. So when you go against psychedelics, you're going, very bad move politically, right? Or to start going at it that way. So a lot of forces are making it easy for us to kind of come out now. Here in LA, it's kind of crazy world, I mean, we're in LA, go to the Insight booth at the break, and you can get whatever you want there, lab tested and so on and so forth. So LA and Southern California, and California in general, is kind of its own thing. We're in like a totally weird upside down world. I went to Long Beach to an event, and they were literally selling pounds of mushrooms out of a professional building. So that tells me that they're really not coming after us, because you would just go in there and take everybody away. So we're in a little gap right now. Politically, we've got worlds and a lot of storms going. Maybe it'll change bad, maybe it'll change better. I don't know, but right now we're in a really good spot with the legal thing. Our lawyers in the last session will address one way, which is creating a religious organization, which I'm sure you've seen among your colleagues. I have a few good friends who have created churches to protect their licenses to be therapists, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things we can do, but right now we don't even need protection because they're not coming after us. Now, it could change tomorrow, it could change tonight, but so far it hasn't. So that's just kind of like the weather in terms of regulatory stuff. I think it has to do with a calling, personally. When you have a calling, it doesn't even come up on the radar, it just doesn't come up. I don't lay in bed at night worried that somebody's going to come and arrest me for the acid that I have in my house. I don't see that happening in this lifetime, like, hey, we got 2 tabs here, we're taking you away for 30 years. No, it's not going to happen. But a lot of our therapists, good friends of mine, they won't touch anything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
You know,
I will say the advice that Leonard gave you, be brave, is beautiful, it's simple, and we complicate life so much.
Yeah.
And things are really simple, so we can keep things simple, and it is just about being brave.
That's all.
And stepping into the unknown.
And listening to the medicine. The medicine will show you. I sat with some product manufacturers in a meeting a couple months ago, and I just asked them, they make wonderful products, MDMA products and so on. And I said, and they have a factory and, like the whole thing. And I said at lunch, aren't you worried? And they said, do you want some more sushi or not? And that was the end of the conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We kind of went over 2 hours. Thank you, Loretta. And please stay and hang out, and people, I'm sure, want to talk with you more. Well, let's take a 20-minute break. We've gone over 2 hours, so that's kind of the kidney signal. And it's now, just so you know, I have 3:48, so let's say at 4:05, please be back in here at 4:05. Our main exhibitors are out in the hallway. If you want to see some of their products and services, go down by the men's room right down the way. Check out the Insight booth when you have time.
you.